Picture this: you've lived in your home for decades, every brick holding a memory. One day, without warning, strangers arrive claiming it's theirs. The bank says you owe hundreds of thousands on a mortgage you never took. This isn't fiction. It happened across the UK in a scheme so bold it shocked even seasoned investigators. At the heart of it, Alick Kapikanya and Marshall Mr. Fastcash, Joseph, two men who turned property theft into an art form. Their scam targeted the elderly, stole millions, and sparked one of Britain's longest deportation battles. From 2007 to 2010, Kapikanya and Joseph weren't dabbling in petty crime. They were running a calculated, large-scale operation. Their goal was simple: steal high-value properties and drain them of equity without the owner's knowledge. Using insider knowledge of real estate transactions, they identified homes that were mortgage-free and vulnerable. Then came the paper trail: forged deeds, counterfeit utility bills, and fraudulent applications. Everything was planned down to the smallest detail, allowing them to slip through cracks in the property and banking systems. They operated with confidence, each success fueling the next. This wasn't luck. It was methodical theft on an industrial scale. The operation was so smooth that homeowners often remained completely unaware until legal letters or debt collectors arrived at their doors. Over time, the scam grew bolder and more ambitious, setting the stage for millions to be stolen before authorities finally pieced together the puzzle. Kapikanya's life in the UK was marked by both ambition and controversy. Originally from Zambia, he arrived in Britain decades earlier and quickly became involved in various business ventures, some legitimate, others less so. His relationship with the Home Office was strained long before the mortgage fraud case. He had previously faced immigration issues, including an early deportation attempt that he successfully fought off. Over the years, he became well-versed in navigating the UK legal system, a skill that would later be mirrored in his 25-year deportation battle. Mr. Fastcash had cultivated an image of a successful property wheeler-dealer. Charismatic, sharply dressed, and always in motion, Joseph built connections in real estate circles, projecting an aura of confidence and financial know-how. Beneath the surface, however, his dealings often skirted the line between legality and outright fraud. The two met in Manchester in the early 2000s, introduced through mutual contacts in the property investment scene. Both saw opportunity in one another. Kapikanya admired Joseph's network and salesmanship, while Joseph valued Kapikanya's calculated, strategic approach. Their partnership began with small, questionable property transactions. Over time, they realized they could make far more money by targeting mortgage-free properties owned by elderly individuals. This discovery was the seed from which their multi-million-pound fraud would grow, a collaboration that combined Joseph's charm with Kapikanya's methodical scheming. The fraud's cruelty lay in its deliberate targeting of elderly, mortgage-free homeowners, individuals who had spent decades paying off their homes, only to have them used as collateral in fraudulent mortgage deals. Kapikanya and Joseph viewed such properties as gold mines: no active lender oversight, high equity, and owners unlikely to check their property records regularly. They located these victims through land registry searches, estate listings, and occasionally personal tips. Clues such as long-term ownership, an older resident living alone, and minimal security made a property an attractive target. Once a home was selected, the gang studied the owner's habits, sometimes even gathering personal information from neighbors under false pretenses. Accomplices, chosen to resemble the owners, would impersonate them in meetings with solicitors and lenders. Fake IDs, forged utility bills, and counterfeit title deeds would be prepared to make the deception airtight. For the victims, the impact was devastating. Many only discovered the fraud after receiving letters demanding repayment on loans they had never taken. Beyond the financial harm, there was an emotional toll: the violation of trust, the fear of losing their homes, and the stress of lengthy legal battles to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. The operation ran like a well-oiled business with a criminal core. Step 1. Identify high-value, mortgage-free properties via the land registry. Step 2. Assign an accomplice to impersonate the owner using forged documents. The gang's paperwork was sophisticated. Utility bills, bank statements, and even tenancy agreements were crafted to pass solicitor and lender checks. Once the impersonator met with a lawyer, they'd initiate either a mortgage application or a transfer of ownership. Without a bank monitoring the property, lenders often had no reason to suspect fraud. When mortgage funds were approved, the cash flowed quickly into accounts controlled by the network. From there, it was withdrawn in stages, moved through multiple accounts, or spent immediately on high-value purchases. Both Kapikanya and Joseph indulged heavily. Kapikanya funneled money into luxury cars, designer clothing, overseas trips, and investments in side businesses to mask the fund's origins. Joseph, embracing his Mr. Fastcash persona, spent lavishly on expensive suits, watches, and entertainment, reinforcing the illusion of legitimate success. They also financed extravagant parties, leased high-end properties, and maintained lifestyles that projected wealth and confidence. The fraud was scalable. Once one property was milked, the process could be repeated on the next. This cycle continued until law enforcement pieced together the pattern, linking multiple suspicious transactions back to the same network. The scam's reach would have been impossible without a support network of accomplices. Kapikanya and Joseph recruited people they trusted, or at least believed they could control. Some were old acquaintances from Cambridge and Manchester. Others were drawn in through property and business connections. The pitch was simple. We just need you to pose as a property owner, sign a few papers, and you'll get a cut. For those struggling financially, the promise of easy money was tempting. Others were seasoned fraud participants, fully aware of the operation's illegality. Irene Perciful, 50, from Duxford posed as a walked-in road homeowner. Peter Tanner, 54, from Pampisford, Cambridgeshire posed as a property owner. Myra Trigg, 57, from Manchester also posed as a property owner. Bruce Robertson, 51, from Duxford banked £50,000. Chris Campbell, 31, from Barnstead, Surrey handled £8,000. Their roles went beyond just showing up. Some managed bank accounts, others moved funds through secondary transactions. A few even scouted potential properties. Without them, Kapikanya and Joseph couldn't have impersonated homeowners convincingly. The scam relied on people willing to play the part in front of lenders and solicitors. Once the system was proven to work, the operation grew bolder. Kapikanya and Joseph began running multiple property scams in parallel, sometimes hitting several in the same month. Their forged documents became more sophisticated, even fooling experienced conveyancing solicitors. They started targeting not only individual homes, but also commercial properties with high equity. Larger loans meant bigger payouts, which in turn fueled their extravagant lifestyles. Kapikanya invested in side ventures, some legitimate, others fronts for laundering money. Joseph threw money at cars, luxury holidays, and a wardrobe that screamed success to anyone he met. The network expanded to include more front people, bank account holders, and even insiders willing to bend rules for a cut. They rotated accomplices to avoid suspicion, but the sheer number of fraudulent transactions eventually created a trail. The more they made, the more reckless they became. Large withdrawals, flashy spending, and a pattern of suspicious property deals began attracting the attention of both financial institutions and law enforcement. What began as a calculated, patient scheme was now a high-speed grab for as much cash as possible before the walls closed in. Suspicious activity reports from banks first put the gang on the radar. Several lenders noticed near-identical transactions involving supposedly different homeowners, all with mortgages taken out on long-owned mortgage-free properties. Detectives from Greater Manchester Police's Economic Crime Unit began piecing the puzzle together. They pulled land registry records, traced financial transfers, and conducted surveillance. The web of connections linking Kapikanya, Joseph, and their accomplices grew clearer with each step. One breakthrough came when an accomplice's bank account used to receive loan proceeds was found to be linked to multiple fraudulent applications. Phone records revealed calls between this accomplice and both Kapikanya and Joseph during key stages of the fraud. Undercover officers visited properties where fraud had occurred, speaking to bewildered owners who had no idea their homes were leveraged against massive loans. The victim's testimony became critical in building the case. The investigation revealed that the gang had attempted to strip more than £3 million in equity from properties across Manchester and Cambridge. Prosecutors noted the methodical nature of the fraud. This wasn't opportunistic theft, but a planned, repeatable business model for financial crime. By the time arrests were made, the evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, bank trails, and witnesses all pointing to a coordinated conspiracy. The trial took place at Manchester Crown Court, where the prosecution laid out the fraud step by step. Judge Robert Atherton heard how Kapikanya and Joseph had masterminded the scheme, handpicking accomplices and orchestrating every move. The Crown Prosecution Service, represented by Ben Southam, described the operation as a deliberate, sophisticated attack on some of the most vulnerable members of society. Evidence included forged IDs, falsified title deeds, and bank records showing rapid movement of funds. Victims gave emotional testimony, describing the shock of receiving repayment demands for loans they'd never applied for. Some broke down on the stand, reliving the stress and fear of potentially losing their homes. Kapikanya denied the charges, claiming he was involved in legitimate property investment. Joseph, too, downplayed his role, painting himself as a middleman unaware of the fraud's full scope. The jury disagreed. Judge Atherton, in his sentencing remarks, called their actions calculated and cynical, noting the life-altering harm caused to their victims. He stressed that greed was the only motive, and that such large-scale deception undermined trust in the entire property system. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on multiple counts of conspiracy to defraud and related offenses. When sentencing came, Kapikanya was handed 6 years in prison, while Joseph received between 4 and 4.5 years. Judge Atherton said both men had shown no remorse and had treated their victims as obstacles to wealth. The accomplices also faced justice. Bruce Robertson was jailed for 30 months. Irene Perciful was jailed 12 months for conspiracy to defraud. Peter Tanner was given a 15-month sentence suspended for 2 years plus 140 hours unpaid work. Myra Trigg had 32-week suspended sentence plus 80 hours unpaid work. Chris Campbell had 12-month suspended sentence plus 140 hours unpaid work. Judge Atherton noted that while the prison terms reflected the seriousness of the crimes, the emotional and financial damage to the victims could never be undone. The sentences sent a message: such organized fraud would be met with significant custodial punishment. Kapikanya's conviction and prison sentence were not the end of his legal troubles. As a Zambian national, he faced deportation at the end of his term. The Home Office moved quickly, serving a deportation order upon his release. What followed was one of the UK's longest-running deportation sagas. For 25 years, Kapikanya fought removal through a combination of legal appeals, asylum claims, and human rights arguments. He cited fears of persecution in Zambia, claimed ties to the UK community, and challenged the legality of the deportation order at every turn. The case became a flashpoint in public debates about immigration law. Critics argued it exposed flaws in the system, allowing a convicted fraudster to remain despite multiple failed appeals. Supporters of stricter enforcement saw it as an example of how the appeals process could be exploited. Throughout, Kapikanya managed to remain in the UK, sometimes living openly, other times keeping a lower profile. Periodically, his story resurfaced in the press, reigniting public frustration over why he had not been removed. For many, the deportation fight was a second chapter in his defiance of authority. The same persistence and resourcefulness he used to run a multi-million-pound scam were now keeping him in the country against official orders. The fall of Alick Kapikanya and Marshall Joseph is a cautionary tale about greed, deception, and the false promise of easy money. Their scheme was clever in its planning, ruthless in its execution, and devastating in its impact. Innocent homeowners faced sleepless nights and financial ruin, while the gang lived fast and spent lavishly. Justice caught up, but even prison didn't close the book. Kapikanya's 25-year deportation fight ensured his name remained in headlines long after the sentencing. It's a reminder that crime leaves deep scars, not just on victims, but on the trust that binds communities. Thank you for watching. What are your thoughts on the actions of Alick Kapikanya, Marshall Joseph, and their network of accomplices? Was justice served, or should the sentences have been harsher? And what do you think about Kapikanya's 25-year deportation battle? Drop your opinions in the comments below. Let's get the conversation going. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss our next true crime story. Till next time.